For nearly a millennia, Aristotle's theory of how objects fall was dominant over all other ideas. It was not until after the rise of the Catholic Church and the onset of the Renaissance that Galileo Galilei challenged this view and opened a can of worms that would later become modern mechanics. Aristotle lived over 2,300 years ago and believed objects fell to Earth faster if they were heavier, at a speed proportional to the mass of the object. This simply means that an object twice as heavy as another object should fall twice as fast. If the object was falling through something thick, say water, it would fall slower than in a thinner medium, such as air, with an inversely proportional relationship. This means that if the object fell through a medium twice as thick or dense, it fell at half the speed. Now jump ahead some 1900 years to Florence in 1638, a place ruled by religion, where new ideas were not always welcomed. It is here we find a man who would eventually make one of the first scientific strides towards modern physics, Galileo Galilei, a man who had Aristotle in his sights. He asked himself the questions that made everything clear. What would happen if I chained a heavy ball to a light ball? Would it fall faster? Would it fall slower? Would it act as one object? Or two? Let's think about the balls as two separate objects, kept close to each other by the chain. Aristotle said the heavy ball falls fast and the light one more slowly, so the light ball must slow down the faster ball because of the chain. The small ball acts something like a parachute. Together the balls would fall at a speed slower than the big ball would alone. That has to be correct, right? Galileo thought again, and he imagined holding the two balls by the chain. He thought to himself, the balls together are heavier. The chain should make the two balls one big item, right? If it feels like one heavy item, why wouldn't it act like it? In this case, the ball should fall faster than either of the individual balls alone, because, chained together, they form an object that's heavier than either of the other balls. How could this be, though? Galileo had come up with two different ways for the same two balls to fall based on what Aristotle said. This couldn't be possible. How could the chained balls fall slower and faster at the same time? Then a light bulb went off in Galileo's head. It wasn't possible. That was the problem. The only way for this awful paradox of falling balls to actually plummet to the earth was together. That was it. The balls had to fall together. Neither ball ever did fall faster or slower. Each ball must fall at the same speed, whether chained together or falling alone, because otherwise, this just doesn't make any sense. Now he had it in his head. All objects must fall at the same rate, no matter what their weight, no matter what their size. All he had to do was prove it. Imagine Galileo tells Aristotle that he believes there is a new way to view how objects actually fall to Earth. Our imaginary Galileo then proposes a bet over the outcome of a race, and the competitors, two balls, one very light and one dense and heavy, and the race was to the ground. The stakes, the winner's theory would be deemed true. Aristotle bet on the heavy ball to win, and Galileo said that there would be a tie. And just like that, Galileo... Wait a second. Did you see that? They didn't hit at the exact same time. Does that mean that Aristotle was right? Well, not exactly. Aristotle thought that since the pool ball was a lot heavier than the wiffle ball, it would hit way before the wiffle ball. But this isn't what we see. There's only a slight difference between the impact times, and Galileo knew the reason for this. Drag. We won't go too far in depth, but drag is the force that slows things down. It is air resistance, water resistance, and any resistance that's caused by a surrounding medium. So, when an object falls through air, it is slowed down based on its shape, speed, and mass. Galileo knew this, and would not have found it surprising that the balls didn't hit at exactly the same time. He knew a vacuum or an airless chamber would be needed to set up a proper experiment. Now where would we find one of those? We'll use the help of Apollo 15 commander Dave Scott. In 1971, he retested Galileo's famous experiment with a hammer and a feather on the surface of the moon, where almost no atmosphere exists. So, what do you have for us, Dave?
How about that? This proves that Mr. Galileo was correct in his findings.
As can be seen, Galileo was right. In the absence of drag, objects do accelerate in the same way when they fall, regardless of shape, mass, or size.